Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 22nd edition of Beyond the Data, where Carrie and I are going to be talking about House Bill 218, what has been billed as an anti-vaccine mandate bill, which is actually kind of funny. But before we get to that, we do have a couple of announcement type things to talk about. First of all, next Monday is Monday the 29th, and down in Columbus, there's going to be a party. It's going to be fabulous. You could pay $5,000 a plate at a minimum, or up to 50,000. Well, the lowest level there. What is it? The sponsor is it's that's only $5,000 a plate, or you could go with $50,000 a plate to have dinner with Mike DeWine. Wouldn't that be fabulous? Now, I mean, since thousands of us are facing the loss of jobs and being forced into injecting things into our body against our will and all this kind of stuff, a lot of us don't really have the money to like afford that 5,000, 50,000. But, you know, there might be some room outside, you know, the Columbus Club.
Yeah, maybe they'll throw us a doggy bag.
Yeah, we could just like hang out together. But in all seriousness, that is actually what we are kind of planning to do. I've been reaching out to several different large groups, and we'll see how we bring it together. And we've got Ohio Stands Up and Moms Against DeWine, partially, and we'll see who else. We've got potentially some people from Warner Mendenhall's groups that might be coming up as well. It's all kind of taking shape right now. We'll see what we can bring here. I mean, this particular instance, when you guys first pointed it out to me, I thought it was great because it's specifically DeWine will be there. And what unites absolutely every single one of us is DeWine mandating our lives, telling us what we must do, and also the elites who can afford that $50,000 a plate and live their lives quite happily telling us what to do. And so I think this would be a great place to get all of us together and be seen.
Yes.
And you've got some other personal reasons to be there too.
Of course. You know, yes. And I think everybody has a personal reason.
Well, yours are pretty intense.
Yeah. I think that, you know, there's not one person that hasn't been affected some way, somehow in the last two years or whatever, 21 months, wherever we're at now, like way too long. So, you know, it's not sponsored by anybody or any group in particular. It's just Ohioans coming together. And I said, once I found out that it was happening, that he was having it, I didn't care if I had to go by myself. But I was going to hang out.
You will not be by yourself. That I can guarantee.
Right. Yeah. And then it just kind of like spun, you know, somebody else was like, hey, I'll go. And I don't like what he did. Hey, my daughter is, you know, losing her job, or my son this is happening. And that kind of is how it snowballed. So regardless of the reason, the end result is still the same. We've all suffered. So we're just going to hang out. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to happen, but I mean, it's going to be
it'll be a party.
Yeah, we will be seen, and
it'll be a lot cheaper than their party, but
it'll be a lot cheaper. Yeah, a lot cheaper.
Yeah, so more information about the details and parking and all that kind of stuff is forthcoming. I'm working with people who actually know how to do protesty things, but we'll get there. I will definitely release that information, and I hope a lot of you people who are watching will come.
And I know Kelly Klein. They've been like, I don't know. They've been working with you, but I know that they've been looking at like aerials. I never know how to get anywhere. I just follow the GPS. So I never thought about parking or anything like that, to be honest.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out before Monday. So stay tuned.
I'm glad somebody is. Me, definitely not the person to organize. So.
No, you're one we organize around, right?
Right.
So The second little bit of announcement is I want to announce next week's Beyond the Data, next Sunday's Beyond the Data will be with State Senator Andrew Brenner, who is out of, oops, I forgot to check which district he's out of, but he's represents Delaware County and I think a little bit outside as well. He will be here to talk about what is happening in our schools in terms of absenteeism, test scores, all these things that we know are happening to our children, and yet nobody is actually talking about them. And this is something near and dear to his heart, and so he's going to come and he's going to talk about our numbers when it comes to how this is affecting our kids. So there is a nice pre-advertisement for next Sunday. All right. I think I've gotten all the announcements kind of covered here. So without further ado, let's go talk about House Bill 218. Now, this thing came pretty much out of nowhere publicly. It is, as far as I understand, it's basically House Bill 435 with a little bit of tweaks here and there.
House not Bill, good ones.
Not good. Actually, there are. I went line by line in here, and there are a couple things in here where even I'm like, yeah, actually, that's a pretty good thing. It's just overwhelmed by all the bad. And it would be good if, the legislators would keep those good things and, take out more of the bad instead of the opposite way that they like to operate. So with this bill, there's been a little bit, very little bit actually, of support for it. When this thing was passed, when it was passed out of committee, it passed the floor of the House of Representatives within a day. I mean, it just appeared out of nowhere, went through committee, and was passed on the floor pretty much instantaneously. No discussion, no nothing, just yay. And lots of, patting on the back by the legislators. And of course, everybody outside is like kind of scratching their head going, I don't know about this. This does not feel right. And, there's some people who've been listing different pros and cons about, oh, this bill does this and it protects everyone and it's so great and all that. And I'm a person, I like to go to the original sources, having somebody tell me what they think it's about. That's great. That tells me what they think about it. But I want to go to the original source. And so I, went through and read every single line of this thing. I don't know if I understood it all.
Shannon's comment wins the internet. That's it.
No, I'm pretty sure they didn't. Or if they did it, they skimmed it and they didn't think about what it actually said. Right. Just the headlines and not understanding the consequences of their actions there. So I have clipped out different sections of them. I hope I managed to label each page that they're on. So you can go in, check for yourself on both of the links both on my page, group page, and on the Beyond the Data page. I have put in the link to the document itself, so you can go and you can check for yourself and read for yourself. This is what it is. So I would say let's start with the first part of this, and this is about school stuff, and there's a pretty much identical section on employers. So anything here talking about school, private college, and state of institution, we can just basically replace with employer, and it's word for word, almost word for word, that way with both employers and schools. So let's start with just the schools because that was the section I clipped out. So this bill says a school, private college, or state institution of higher education shall not require a student to receive any of the following utilizing messenger ribonucleic acid, deoxyribonucleic acid, or any other genetic vaccine technology, and for which
that's not even a word, but okay.
And for which the United States Food and Drug Administration has not issued a biologics license or otherwise granted full approval. Now, at first blush, this sounds pretty good, right? I mean, yeah, they're not allowed to mandate this. This is fantastic. Yay! Except for that last line there where it's like, except for ones that they have not issued a biologics license or otherwise granted full approval. Well, guess what? That's Pfizer already. Pfizer's already passed this bar. I mean, I've seen some commentary out there that well, you know, this will protect us for a year or whenever it gets approved. We're already there. This when this would go into effect, it would instantaneously include Pfizer here. Now, the other interesting thing I found about this. Do I have that here? Please tell me I was thinking straight. Or is there anything you'd like to say about that one?
Other than they did not add a medical device, because it should say a therapeutic or medical device, and that was not there. They put drug, vaccine, biological product, a form of genetic immunotherapy.
I mean, those three. Yeah, I really want to talk about that as well.
Yeah,
but again, this is like, I let's talk about this in the next section, because this first section is saying they can't do it unless they have a biologics license.
Right.
So this is the top line. They can't do it, and that's what people are reading, except if it has a biologics license.
What that does is it just boxes them in to have to take Pfizer or
no. But wait, there's more. Here's the fun part. This is where the verbiage makes a difference. So, the moment you have something that has a biologics license, then you can start mandating. That's what the second section here says. In the event that the school, private college, or state institution of higher education requires a student to receive a vaccine, drug, biological product, or form of genetic immunotherapy utilizing blah. Now, already, just stop and pay attention. Nowhere in here are they saying COVID-19. But they're saying if an institution of higher education, school, private college, whatever, wants to mandate a vaccine, a drug, a biological product, or a form of genetic immunotherapy, they can for anything.
Right.
There's no limitations in this document here. There's no limitations. They do not have to say, they don't have to give a reason why. They don't have to say, well, we're doing it to protect our whatever, or we have some kind of onus on the employer or the school or anything. There's no limitations here. It's just, well, I feel like I want my employees or students to take this drug.
Right. Take Enbrel, take Humira, take whatever.
I haven't seen any limitations in here.
No.
And it's just anything, any disease, just because. And that right there is one of the critical things when I first picked this up and I read it, and I was like, whoa, this is not just about COVID-19. Yes, COVID-19 is right top of our head and we're focused on the vaccine and all that. But this bill expressly allows and permits schools and employers to mandate vaccines, drugs, biological products, and genetic immune therapy. And just let that one sink in for a moment. The only thing that's required of them is that the drug that they are requiring has a biologics license. And a biologics license is a very low bar. That's just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially a biologics license is essentially saying that the manufacturing of this product is pretty good. It's pretty reliable, and you can, it's not really concerned whether it's being used appropriately or not.
No, yes and no. So the biologics, what that means is how that it's developed. So obviously, penicillin would not be a biologic.
Why?
So penicillin is not a biologic because of how it was developed.
Okay, so what is the definition? I should be more clear. What is the definition of a biologics? That, because in the end, that's what this is. Any of those items has to fall under a biologics license, or actually, as it said, any other FDA approval method. But a biologics license refers specifically to what class of drugs?
It is manufactured to enter the cells and change something within the cell or around the cell. So it can be manufactured in large quantities to change either within or protect on the outside of the cell.
Or inside?
So, right, within or on the outside of. So you're looking at a biologic, like I always use Enbrel, Humira, HCQ is a dual. That's one of the few meds that actually has a dual licensure. It's a biologic and an anti-malarial. But Enbrel is a big one. And look at what all that they have in common. Enbrel, Humira, what is another big one that we see? Methotrexate.
Oh yeah.
What if you look at what all three of those have in common? Which I don't want to get into that at all, but that, I think that's for each person to decide. Premarin is another one that is a biologic, and Premarin is one that is made from the urine of mares. Premarin. So a pregnant mare urine.
Mare urine.
Yeah. So these horses are kept pregnant and catheterized in a stanchion and for years and years and years. And that is how, the more that they're pregnant, the more they can manufacture that drug. So that is a biologic. It's made from the urine of a pregnant mare.
And so in this particular law, the way it is written, I know that, I've met dozens of representatives from the state over the last year and a half, and I know a lot of them really do. They're just like us. They're just as frustrated and scared, quite frankly, of this kind of overreach into our lives and our children's lives. I know that they have the best of intentions, but you got to pay attention to exactly the words you are using and what the meaning of the words are. And so that right there. So biologics is there to mess around outside of your cell or inside of your cell. And this bill is saying, hey, you can, as a school, as an employer, you can mandate this on your students or employees.
So I did just check just to make sure that I'm at this point in time, I didn't used to be like that, but now I'm afraid to even recite a definition that we've always known to be true because it seems like that they're changing. And they don't always match. So NIH, FDA, and CDC, which used to always be consistent, no longer are. Always, but this one, it is still the same, which is a biologic is manufactured in a living system such as a microorganism
or a pregnant mare.
Could be, so it can be animals or humans, and it's typically manufactured through chemical synthesis. That is a biologic,
and it can do anything. And in this, again, this law is not limited to vaccine. They can mandate drugs on you if they want to, and they do not have to give a reason for it. They do not have to have an explanation. Nothing at all. They can just simply do it, and this bill would codify that ability into law. And that's just, at least for me, that's a pretty scary thought right there. However, it goes on from there, to say how exactly the employer, or sorry, the employee or the student must comply with this mandate if the school or employer so desires. The first option is to receive the vaccine, drug, biological product, or form of genetic immunotherapy. I like that one. I had to tack that one on there. Whew. Which is obvious. The second one is a very interesting one to me, especially in our current situation. You can receive a vaccine, drug, biological product, or form of genetic immunotherapy utilizing, et cetera, against the same disease that is available under an emergency use authorization. So, right there, they did an incredibly cool run around the current situation and liability. Because right now, Pfizer has Comirnaty. Comirnaty has a biologics license. So you have the biologics license available for just Comirnaty. Not for Pfizer BioNTech, the original, that's under an EUA, not for Moderna, and not for Johnson & Johnson. But Comirnaty is not physically available to any of us in the United States. But because it exists, they can mandate it. And since you can't get Comirnaty, well, then you can take one of the other ones under EUA, which is basically an end run around to allow mandating products under an EUA.
So it would be because one of them has a license, a biologics license, and the other one doesn't, and that is called a biosimilar.
These aren't biosimilar even though. This is like
no.
The vagueness of this is incredible.
Right, but I'm just talking about those two products. So the Pfizer, because I know that there's a constant like brick wall with those two. Because one holds a biologic license, the other one can be used as a biosimilar as a substitution per se. They are legally distinct, but interchangeable as a biosimilar.
I hate. Right. Either way, even if you take the difference between the BioNTech and Comirnaty out of the picture, because Comirnaty exists with a biologics license, the others are allowable now and essentially mandated.
Mm-hmm.
Because they do it against the same disease and is available and are available under an emergency use authorization. So that's kind of nice, isn't it? Great. It's really great. Now, the one part of this that is positive is that you have those first two options. You take the vaccine or drug or biological product or genetic immunotherapy, or one that's under EUA, or you can take an exemption. And here's where a lot of people are like, yay, this is great. You can have some exemptions. First exemption are the medical contraindications, and we'll get a little more in detail about those medical contraindications and how they can be determined. Natural immunity. Hey, yay, we're finally recognizing natural immunity. This is good. This is a great thing. You've had COVID, you can use your natural immunity. If you're looking at this on a top line level, this sounds good. This really does. And then, of course, the last one is reasons of personal conscience, including religious convictions, which is a really great one to have, an exemption to have. That one is a pretty strong one there. So, okay, this is good. Those exemptions are good. I mean, we should definitely take a deep, hard look at the fact that all of these businesses and schools can tell you to take a drug for whatever reason they want, but at least there's some exemptions. So let's take a look at exactly what these exemptions require. This is the first one, the medical exemptions. So to claim an exemption as described in Division C2A, which is medical exemption, A student shall submit to the school, private college, state institution of higher education, or employer, a written statement signed by a physician who has a bona fide physician-patient relationship with the student as described in section 473177. The student shall not be required to submit any additional information beyond the written statement. Now that is one part, this part here, I really like this part here that somebody did at whoever added this is really good. I mean, that's a good thing, that you don't have to submit any further written information, because that is critical. We're seeing a lot of that right now, where you say, no, I have whatever exemption, and then the employer or school comes back and says, no, you need to tell us more. Oh, you need to tell us more. You need to tell us more.
I got a question. Has there ever been legislation that for real used the word or the phrase bona fide?
I have no idea. That's a good question.
I didn't even know that was like a legit phrase, other than just people, until I'm just shocked. I'm just curious. Sorry.
No, I believe that's a technical term even.
Is it really?
So I believe so, yeah. But now you got me all distracted now.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to use it now a lot.
So the interesting thing about this particular exemption is that the state gets to determine what a bona fide physician-patient relationship is. And they actually write it out. What does it mean? What constitutes a bona fide physician-patient relationship? First of all, the only physicians that can do this would be an individual author to practically MDs and ODs. Am I back?
Yep.
Yeah, I am. All right. I have no idea what's going on here. I'm getting, upgraded my internet. I'm getting zapped. I don't know. Nobody's on the web, just me. I don't get it. Whatever. So where did I get cut off?
Oh, I heard that the three, who could actually do this.
Okay, yeah. So MDs or ODs, you only have those two. So you can't have chiropractors, you can't have, naturopaths in Ohio anyway are treated pretty horribly. So
that's weird, because I just looked up the definition of bona fide, because I totally did not know that was even a real thing. And it just says genuine, not counterfeit.
Mm-hmm. But they are the ones who are determining what a genuine relationship is. And it can only be with those two. And you also have to, first of all, the physician has to have conducted an employee. I'm losing again. Am I here? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
All right. I do not know what is going on here. All right. So hopefully it will leave me alone. But the first step is that you have to have that in-person examination of the student or employee. So no telehealth allowed, which is interesting, because now all of a sudden we're pushing telehealth, and lots of doctors are really heavily encouraging telehealth.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, you would know, wouldn't you? And the second, the physician has reviewed the student's or employee's medical history, which is that's a fair one.
I would hope.
Yeah, one would hope. But number 3 and number 4 are very interesting as well. The physician expects to provide care to the student or employee on an ongoing basis, and the student or employee expects to receive care from the physician on an ongoing basis. What does that even mean?
So you froze, so I don't know where you're talking
in terms
or what
of
you're
ongoing
saying.
Basis. I mean, I don't even. Uh-oh, did I get cut out again?
You did, but I said, well, you froze, because I was just gonna keep going, but we're an ongoing basis in the state of Ohio. Actually, I think it's pretty much at every state. And we actually have one of the more lax laws for that is they have to be seen in 12 months, once every 12 months, in order to have their medication refilled or anything.
That's a lot.
Yep.
I'm struggling to think of the last time I went. I'm trying to think of, it's been many, many years since I've seen any doctor, let alone the same doctor multiple times or have any setup in that way.
Right. So if you have a medical reason that you cannot take that, whatever that they're trying to push, chances are those are also that they're being treated for something else. So they would have an established relationship where they see a provider annually.
Yeah, because it is a very tight, quite frankly, it's a very tight definition of medical exemption there.
Yeah.
So this one actually might be better than generalized ones, but you need to have that. The state is now defining who gets to determine.
I'm glad. I'm glad for that, as far as that, that you're going to follow up, that says you have the intent to follow up with them. It doesn't say that you have to follow up with that particular person. A lot of physicians are in a practice where you get bounced around from nurse practitioner, doctor, whatever. But I'm glad, because when we did not have that regulation, we had things like pill mills.
Yeah, that is
so
true.
I like that.
We do have that there is that other side to it as well.
Yeah.
Because there is that issue, but it also creates an issue right now when people who are now finding out that their doctors are not believing the same things that they do.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the relative risk of it. So, but no, the pill mill situation is fair. All right. So the medical exemption, okay, that can work for some people probably.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Then comes the fun one, the natural immunity. Hey, we're taking a natural immunity. People who've been sick already before can get out of taking this vaccine, drug, biological product, or immunotherapy, or genetic immunotherapy.
Which is not even a thing, by the way.
Which is not even a thing. Well, but they want to make it a thing. So
just like, breakthrough, or with under-vaccinated. That has never been a word that we heard. Under-vaccinated has never been a word until this.
Well, until this, and everything's different now.
It's brand new.
Here we go with what they mean by natural immunity. How do you get this beautiful, logical, natural immunity exemption? To claim an exemption as described in that section, a student shall submit written documentation to the school, private college, et cetera, that the student has been tested for the presence of antibodies against the same disease in a form or manner recognized by the medical community. So who's the medical community, first of all? Who defines that? And, well, we have to wait for them to recognize it. And I'm sure you'll go into that shortly. And at the time of testing, had antibodies in an amount at least equal to or greater than those conferred by a vaccine, drug, biological product, or form of genetic immunotherapy using mRNA, DNA, or any other genetic vaccine technology that has been issued a biologics license or otherwise granted full approval. What number is that? You have people who, when given one of these so-called vaccines, or we can start, maybe we should just start calling it genetic immunotherapy, because they clearly are calling it genetic immunotherapy.
People will make fun of me if I say that phrase. So I'll say bona fide before I'll use that whatever you just said phrase.
Genetic immunotherapy.
Right.
So
Whatever.
people who take this genetic immunotherapy can have many different reactions to it. Some people have no antibodies created. Some people have off the chart number of antibodies created. So just in this line alone, they are requiring a person to prove natural immunity based on an unknowable number. Because what does that mean? How much does one of these things produce? So how are we supposed to know this?
I'm truly listening, but I unplugged my headphones because I had somebody else here listening as well. So I was listening to her side commentary as you're talking. And it's real interesting to see that, our first year college clinical lab students have got a better grasp of this particular portion than what our legislatures do. I think that speaks volumes. And I don't know politics. I don't know this bill. I stopped at page 4 or 5, whatever it was, because I was so irritated with the whole thing. I couldn't do it anymore. And I thought, I don't know who's in charge of looking at these bills to be like, oh, yeah, you can do that. Or, oh, no, that's not a word. It's fake. You have to change it. Like, I don't know who's supposed to do that or if that's a thing, but it should be. And I'm pretty sure there's some college students that would be like, hey, if you're going to do healthcare things, maybe I can help you out because this is right up my alley. And they would probably do it for like a freaking Klondike bar. I don't know. But still, there's got to be a better way than what's happened. But yes. When you look at, you cannot compare natural immunity with, is this asking for the vaccination? Are we at that point yet?
What? Sorry?
What can you read that to me one more time?
All right, so
that
during the student has been tested for the presence of antibodies against the same disease. First of all, does it nicely cause you some pain that antibodies against the disease? But moving on, in a form or manner recognized by the medical community, and at the time of testing had antibodies in an amount at least equal to or greater to than those conferred by a vaccine, drug, biological product, or form of genetic immunotherapy.
Okay, so you can't. So no. You're asking to compare apples to oranges. So when you have a natural infection, you're going to create a response against RBD, S subunits 1 and 2, or the S portion of the spike protein, as well as N. So you have 3 different, let's say those 3 things. You have S, and then you have S1 and S2 subunits, N and RBD. So there's your 5 fingers. So if you're naturally infected, you have all 5 fingers. So when you test for your antibody levels, then you'll be testing for all 5 fingers. The vaccination only, because what you're injecting in or you're inoculating against only creates a response against 2 of those. So you're missing 3 fingers. There, 3. Whenever
and this thing does not clarify at all. It doesn't specify which ones are we testing for. Are the antibody tests? Are we looking at antibody tests that are testing for all 5? Or are we testing?
It doesn't matter. You can't compare those. That's like comparing and I will use this as an example because it happened and I remember it very well, and it was not a pleasant experience. If an individual, if you test them for the herpes simplex virus, now there's 1 and 2. 1 creates the typical cold sores that we see. The other one, the basis of it is not cold sores. It's transmitted a different way. And when the results were red, you can't compare those 2. When the results were red, to the patient, they immediately thought they got the one not transmitted from a cold sore. And it created a huge issue. And this issue went on for over a week, you know, constant questions being called in, very upset family, and rightfully so, until someone that understood lab looked at it and said, wait a minute, Mr., Mrs., whomever, why do you think that? Why do you think you have that? Well, they said, when they called me, they said I had this. No, you get what you test for. So
Yep.
if the test limitation only has 2 fingers, you're not going to be tested for all 5. So you cannot compare. There's no equivalent of those 2 tests. You have a semi-qualitative because you only have 2 fingers against a quantitative. So you have a plus minus test against a number or a test that gives you an actual number.
And that's why they're doing it this way, because what it is it sounds, I mean, if you don't think it through, if you don't read it, if you don't understand what the actual biology or the laboratory work involved in this, it sounds great. We've got natural immunity. I mean, all those people who've had COVID can get out and have the exemptions and not be included. And this sounds great, until you actually read through it and understand that this section doesn't offer natural immunity as an actual out or an exemption. It actually takes it off the table. It makes it impossible to get a natural immunity exemption because you cannot meet this criteria, because this criteria is nonsense.
And it's actually against CDC guidance.
I gotta go read down there. Shall we go read down for the CDC stuff, or?
Well, no, this is actually right there.
All right.
The CDC guidance says SARS-CoV-2 infection results in antibody development against viral proteins, including SNN. Vaccine-induced antibody development has implications for testing only against RBD. A vaccinated person could test positive by serological test for the vaccine antigenic target, SNS subunit, but not against any other non-target protein. Thus, history of vaccination and or prior SARS-CoV-2 infection must be considered when interpreting the antibody results. You cannot compare, and it says it in bold. You cannot compare an antibody test against, an unvaccinated person's antibody test against a vaccinated person's antibody test. And it gives a chart of how we can tell if this and this is positive, but this is absent, then, we can tell this person has had an infection, or
vaccinated, or has actually had the natural disease. So right there already, it is this particular section is going directly against even the CDC, and it's also just simply it's unobtainable. This is an unobtainable exemption. People think this is no. The way this is written is nonsense. It is pure nonsense, and it doesn't allow for it. It takes it off the table. We don't want this. This whole section needs to vanish or be rewritten in a simplified manner. Simply, do you have positive or negative? And then goodbye.
No, you actually can't do positive or negative.
Well, no, for all the entire spectrum of antibodies.
Yeah, but you can't, because those from natural infection do not come positive and negative. They come quantitative.
Oh, they do? Well, do you have a certain, but we don't know what the threshold is. So again, it gets
we don't. we don't know the threshold at this time.
So this whole natural immunity section, bunk. And then comes the next part of the natural immunity section, which is making you have, fits and stuff like that. That the Department of Health, our so effective, efficient Department of Health, shall adopt rules establishing the frequency with which a student shall be retested to determine whether the student's antibody presence remains at least equal or to or greater than those conferred by the vaccine, drug, biological product, or form of a genetic immunotherapy. So,
Right.
when you are infected naturally by a virus, your body mounts an immune response. You develop antibodies to the various proteins in that particular virus. And when your body generally, except in very rare instances, doesn't hang on to those antibodies, it doesn't keep circulating it because it's wasteful. Our bodies are not wasteful generally. So we have our memory T cells, and they hold the memory so that the next time you get exposed to it or something like it, similar enough to it, your body will start making more antibodies. This whole thing completely ignores that entire reality. It's saying you must have circulating antibodies of an undetermined number, because there's no way to determine that number, forever, whether you're exposed to it or not.
So your IgM, which is your now, I always remember M and N. So my M's I have now. So those start about 14 to 21 days after, actually 7 to 21 days. 14, yeah, 14 is like the medium, after an active infection. And those will climb. That means, oh, we've had a recent infection. And then as seroconversion starts to happen, the IgM will come down as the IgG raises. And IgG is your long term. So those should be present for quite some time. But there's a difference between
IgG. Well, that's the other thing though. IgG is only will hang around if you're not stimulated again by whatever the problem is, the antigen is. Your IgGs will fade after.
Not always. I mean, I'm still holding IgG from.
Depending on, there are, like I said, there are some specific things that we'll hold on to because of some other mechanism we do not understand in our immune system. For whatever reason, some diseases cause a reaction that lasts longer, but other ones, they fade away.
Right. Or vaccination. It depends, like our true immunizations, those that provide the sterilization. We used to call them immunizations and vaccinations. So your flu was a vaccination, whereas like your polio was an immunization because it sterilized against it. And you got them through a physical process called inoculation, which was the actual physical act of giving that shot. But again, everything's changed. So what do I know? So now that we're not there anymore.
No. We are not using the natural process of the immune system, and we are missing critical parts in that chain reaction.
A lot of people with the IgG, what they test, and they make the mistake of testing an IgG that is a surface antibody IgG. If you do that, of course, it's not going to show up. In order for an IgG to show up, you would have to have what's called a titered IgG, and those do show up for very many years because that's what pulls that piece of your T and B cell.
Okay. So essentially those would be your T cells test, would be the ones that are the tighter versions.
Yeah, you don't get T and B cells if you don't have IgG. So if that IgG is there and present, not your surface antibody, but your long term, then that's taking those T and B cells, because T and B cells are actually, like, you can do a cumulative test for T and B, but to isolate down to like a SARS-CoV-2 for that particular, that's actually very hard, very, very hard.
Well, that's not what they're asking for in this situation anyway. This is ignoring any memory T cell. That's not even an option. You have to have circulating antibodies.
But that's my point, is your IgG is circulating. So if the correct test is ordered, then you can meet that, but you cannot compare it to the level of vaccination.
And it will decline over time if you are not being, especially for a respiratory virus. I mean, when it comes to a respiratory virus, it doesn't usually create the kind of intense antibody response because you didn't die, and you're not close to death, except in those cases where you really are that close to death. Then your body's going to keep those antibodies around because it's very important that you don't get sick with it again. But if you've had a mild case, you're not likely to have circulating antibodies at all times kept at a high level because it's not advantageous to waste your energy on it. So this thing is requiring that we test, and that the Ohio Department of Health shall determine how frequently we test for antibodies, which is pretty much nonsense, again, because once you've been infected, you have those memory T cells, even if you don't have circulating antibodies. If you are again exposed, it might take
going to. I guess that's where I'm going to disagree with you on that, because you do have those. Like me, I've never tested positive, and my IgG level is very high. Yeah. And it's holding. My IgM isn't, because it hasn't been, it hasn't been an infection that happened recently, but my IgG is holding strong. And we know that even with other SARS that they do hold longer.
Yes, they've been at least 17 years for the original SARS. I mean, one of the key things here is what I would say is the key thing is you will continue to have circulating antibodies, and we don't know how long these ones last. We really don't, because we've not seen them go away. But one of the things that is important for maintaining circulating antibodies is being continuously exposed to the pathogen. And over the last year, we do know that we are being continuously exposed to this. All of us are being continuously exposed to SARS-CoV-2. It's just a question of what is the threshold that our immune system can tolerate without being infected. So you can go around and you can be exposed to it, and that keeps your antibodies flowing so long as that's happening. And it's out there. I mean, SARS-CoV-2 is out there and replicating its little heart away right now. So we will be exposed, and those who have had it should right now be testing positive for antibodies. Now would be a good time. But this is saying pretty much in perpetuity that you've got to keep testing, that you have the same circulating antibodies for a measurement that you can't actually know. Because again, you're comparing it to vaccine-induced, which is limited to just S1 and S2 and not the rest. And it's also, it's an unknowable number. What do you mean it must be more? So this, I think, go on, sorry.
Yeah, so if you look, and at first glance is like, well, this is not unreasonable for anything that else like we've done for, for example, our students or ourselves that have to get, our Hep B series titers done, any titer that we do. And the titer says, if you're from 0 to this, then you're negative. If you're this to whatever, then you're equivocal. Meaning, yeah, you've got some antibodies there, but you're not immune to it. Or if you're above this, then you're immune and you don't have to take a booster. We're not at that part yet to know, what level means that you're immune, which one means that you have some, but some protection, but you could still get it, and which one is too few. And that's because typically when we have vaccines that come out, because they take so long to come out, we've already gotten an approved test. And in order to get but we have an approved test for that disease. And we've monitored those that have taken these, either gotten the disease or taken the vaccine for at least 10 years. So we know what their antibodies are doing. So then by the time that we get to the point to where we need to do a titer, then we have that established threshold, because we're doing whatever we're doing. I don't even know if that's a term. Then we don't have those thresholds. We don't have any of that information to know. So to write a bill saying, yeah, we'll recognize it but we'll just go ahead and turn it over and let the Ohio Department of Health decide. That's just wrong. Everything that we've said up until now, it really doesn't matter. And there's a real big reason why it doesn't matter. So we have Erica here with us. Are you frozen again, Catherine?
No, I'm not frozen.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So my daughter is with us, and Catherine said that we quizzed her before. That is not true. I did not quiz her.
Yes, you did.
So again, as a first year laboratory student, CAP is an accreditation, and it is, what's CAP stand for?
The College of American Pathologists.
Can you hear her, Catherine?
She's a little bit faint, but yes, the College of American Pathologists.
Yeah. So, and CAP is really big. So you have two big accreditations for a lab. You got CAP and CLIA. And CAP is a, oh yeah, and COLA. But CAP is a really big deal. But you don't mess with CAP. So it's kind of like the, I don't know, the IRS of labs. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but typically that's like, it doesn't get any higher than CAP. They set all of the rules and everything for every single lab. So if your lab is not CAP and CLIA accredited, you have rules of things that you can't do. And then if you are CAP accredited, then you have rules that you have to follow. Things such as, you can't have a cup of pop without a lid at your workstation. You can't have Scotch tape on the outside of the lab door, things like that. But it talks about QC, and they make up every rule to everything. So they what?
They perform proficiency testings on all their employees. So everything, they get sent to the lab, and they have a certain amount of tests that they have to run that has to be within the ranges of a certain number to what they also have.
Right.
Yes. I've seen those. Yes, I have seen those for the PCR tests.
Right. So there's all of these proficiency things that has to be done. So if you're not proficient, then you aren't CAP accredited. If you're not CAP accredited, you can't set a threshold. So Erica, why is this section not possible to meet in Ohio?
The Ohio Department of Health isn't CAP accredited.
Whoops. So this entire section here,
which also means they can't receive CMS funds,
cannot be done by the Ohio Department of Health because it is illegal.
And if they're not accredited by CAP, Eric made a good point, they cannot receive CMS funds.
Well, I guess they don't because they don't.
So that's a good way to look at it is, Ohio Department of Health, do they receive CMS funds? Ohio Department of Medicaid does, but not Ohio Department of Health. So if you're not sure, and there really wouldn't be a reason that ODH would need to be CAP accredited. So because they're not, they cannot establish a threshold of anything. They can't establish that the threshold of if I got strep throat. Granted, that's already been done, but I'm just looking at something really easy. They just can't do that. That's just not something that you can do.
You can't even draw them there. Like, if they needed blood work to show this, you can't draw them there.
Right. So if they needed blood work, you can't draw them at that facility, which, think about it. Who goes to the Ohio Department of Health to have an Ohio Department of Health employee draw them? No one. The lab that is accredited will send a specimen to them, and then they will send it to an accredited lab.
Middleman.
Right.
Yeah, you can't even run the test there. I mean, so they would have to, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think we've beaten this one up pretty badly at this point. Mm-hmm. This exemption, while on the surface sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's not.
It's less than useless, and that's kind of the point with a lot of this bill. To me, is that it's not just not a good bill. It's an actively bad bill. First of all, it establishes that schools and employers can mandate, for whatever reason they choose to do, that an employee or a student has to take a vaccine, drug, biological product, or genetic immunotherapy. They don't have to justify it. They get to define what the physician-patient relationship is. And I do wonder on that one, where it's like, okay, how are they going to judge this? Can they be?
I just don't. This is a prime example. Healthcare and politics do not mix. No. And I have said that, I think that was one of the first conversations I ever had. Healthcare and politics do not mix. And when you have non-clinical people that come in and make any type of rule, legislation, policy, this is the product. The left hand does not understand the right hand. Yeah, and then I look at those that are sitting in our state representatives and senators, and the best I can say, for what I know, which my knowledge of government is very limited, but the best I can say is, if you fail at healthcare, there's always room to be a politician.
They could use you, quite frankly.
Well, no, I look there and I see some that have failed miserably at healthcare, so they've become politicians, and they're kind of stuck in there too.
They have. All right, now let's get back on track here, Carrie.
Sorry, that was my soapbox, and I'm done.
So this particular exemption section takes away natural immunity as an exemption, because it's impossible. It is nonsense. It also is illegal, because the ODH cannot make these determinations.
Right.
And also, it is, at this point in time at least, mandating an EUA product.
Right.
Because there are no antibody tests that are not under an EUA, and it is against federal law to mandate something under an EUA. So we've got all sorts of illegalities, nonsensicalness, and just ridiculousness here. Then comes the personal belief exemptions. And this one, I mean, this is good. The personal belief, the personal conscience, which is really important, including religious convictions. This is the most powerful one here. And it, the way this one is written, I can see this one, this is definitely the strongest part of this whole thing, if it can be maintained, first of all. We know from other states, California and New York in particular, this particular exemption tends to get taken away over time, where they had them, and then it gets chipped away because people are abusing it. So as this is written, is really good. I like the way this is written as an exemption. I just do not have faith that it will get to remain. This one is, you shall submit a written statement and shall not be required to submit any additional information beyond the written statement, which is, I think, really good. But what you get from this exemption, the only protection you get, is that the school will not expel you. And as an employee, if you take any of these exemptions, the only thing that the employer cannot do to you is it doesn't terminate your employment. There is nothing here that says they can't discriminate against you. There is nothing here that says that you're protected from discriminatory practices, or they can charge you more for insurance, or they can keep you apart from your colleagues, or anything that they want to do, or keep you masked, or whatever it is, or testing, whatever they want to do to you. None of that is excluded. You can take the exemption and they can do whatever they want to you. It also prevents them from expelling or firing. That doesn't take into account, can they use it, the very fact that you are claiming an exemption, can they use that as a reason to not hire you in the first place? So you have a situation, as we are living through right now, where I believe the Cleveland Clinic, the rumors I heard about that were that the way they're dealing with exemptions is you're not allowed to be with patients, and you're going to get a 30-40% pay cut and increase of 10% on your health insurance, which is basically unlivable. I mean, that's
which is really, if you think about it, if you got 30 to 40% and that decrease and then 10% increase, that's like cutting it by 50%, right?
Well, kind of, but it's a huge, depending on how expensive your healthcare insurance is there. They're going to make it. And I had this conversation with Mitch Marcheski as well, where it's like, that's their next level. Yes, they'll accept your exemptions. Yes, they'll accept this really great personal conscience and religious convictions exemption.
But you can't use the same bathroom.
But you can't use the same bathroom, and that's going to be allowed. That the only thing they can't do to you is expel you or fire you. They can treat you differently, completely differently, and so they cannot hire you in the first place.
I had a doctor reach out about this portion of it, and it was about the lab portion and this portion. And he said, I tried to tell them when they were doing this bill, and they said it really didn't matter because everybody would use this portion of the bill. Like everybody would move to the personal exemption. I'm like, you just that just blew my mind that was the answer that he was given. I was really, really shocked about that, but
which is true, which is fair. I mean, in the end, this like I said, this exemption is the one. This is a good one,
but it doesn't matter
if it get you anything.
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. And I know we didn't talk about the first portion of it, and that's fine. There's a portion on the front of this that says a bill. And on that portion, it goes on to say the EMT, emergency medical technician, can be I'm sorry, I was reading the comments. I got to stop doing that. But an emergency medical technician can perform a test, one of these tests. And I went, no. Now, of course, a paramedic can out in the field. Absolutely. An emergency medical technician, a basic EMT, that is beyond their scope of practice for what's called NREMT, or National Registered Emergency Medical Technician. So what happens, what these people are being put in the place of is lose my job due to a mandate, or they go ahead and they get it and they're an EMT. Now I can lose my license because I just performed a test in the state of Ohio outside of my scope of practice. You cannot do that under
there's actually some verbiage in this bill about the whole scope of practice. I actually didn't cut it out. I wish we had talked about this particular thing before that, because then I would have.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what this state says. Those people that hold that licensure, they have to follow the scope of practice by that license. For example,
this is the section you're talking about here with the EMT.
No, it's at the very beginning. It says a bill.
Yeah.
At the very
this is the section that actually does the job with the EMTs.
Okay, but at the very beginning, under a bill, is the paragraph, because I did not get this far, that actually says I couldn't, like my blood pressure was raising, and I'm like, well, illegal, can't do that. Illegal, can't do that. And I set it to the side. Yep. That portion right there. But again, those are things that cannot be done. You absolutely cannot do it. So now you're putting these people in the position to lose a job or lose their whole license. Like you cannot do that. It's just not fair. And now if they're in a triage situation in a facility under their med control, that's different, because these tests, a majority of them that they would carry, they have to be read at a certain time frame. How are they getting that to the lab to do that? How is that happening? Right. How is that happening? So what you just did was create a bigger bill, because they've had it done once, but it's not a valid test because they can't read it. They can label it, which they actually can't as a basic. A paramedic can label, they can collect it, but they can't read the test. They can't do the results. So that test then needs repeated when they get to the hospital. How are you going to like having that test done a second time? I wouldn't. I'd be fighting mad.
Oh, I didn't even catch that one, because, and that's the other thing, is that there are details here that I don't understand, as I am not a medical person.
Well, you understand more than what I do, because like I said, I only read to the 4th or 5th page and I was like, I can't do this anymore. There's somebody way smarter than me.
It was a serious struggle to do this. And I mean, I did in the end, I did find some things that I did appreciate, I did approve of, I did like. It took me a while to find them, but there are some things there. This one. This is actually one of the ones where I was like, yes, good. Whoever put this in, this is great. So this is actually a written statement or document of, basically it's saying the exemptions in the section that are submitted to a school, private college, or state institution, or employer, is confidential and is not public record under section whatever of the revised code. They can only share the contents of the statement or documentation with authorized personnel only to the extent necessary to comply with the section. This is really important because I have actually heard of a situation where a citizen of a school district did a FOIA request on the exemptions at the school.
I did hear that.
The school released those exemptions. I believed they blocked out the names, but the actual written part of those exemptions were there. So this person just did a FOIA and can read the exemptions, those private letters of the medical issues or religious beliefs or whatever. So I mean, this particular portion, again, this is one where I'm like, yes, whatever bill we come up with, this needs to be part of it. Or better yet, we don't even talk about exemptions. We just say we don't talk about it. We just don't delve into people's private, personal, medical information. But if we're playing with exemptions, this one was a good one. I did appreciate that one.
Heather, I got a question. You commented in the comments, CCF is not mandating in Florida.
I did not comment. Somebody else who's got control of my somebody one. I don't know if it's
the page
or Lori or whoever's got access to it. I don't know who it is.
Okay, because I think they are in Florida. So whoever you are, let's talk. I might move to Florida.
Get out of the Beyond the Data.
No, that's fine. I don't care what they're in, but I want to know about
we can know who they are.
I know I didn't know who they are, to be honest.
All right, and so here's the other one that actually people have been talking about, that's a big deal here. And I actually do have questions for you about how this actually functions in real life as well, is that this has carve-outs for people who are not allowed to take those exemptions, any one of those exemptions, or rather actually any of those exemptions, I believe. They do not apply to any student or employee who is a part of the student's course of study, undergoes instruction or training at either of the following that is owned or operated by or affiliated with a private college or state institution of higher education, either a children's hospital or an ICU. And that they will make a good faith effort to provide equitable instruction and training, or in the case of the employee situation, equitable employment for a student who refuses COVID-19 vaccine and cannot claim an exemption because of this particular one. And already, just on its face, it's pretty nonsense in our current situation, because why a children's hospital? They're at the least risk for this particular disease. Why does everyone who works there have to be vaccinated for this? I mean, and I mean, I do not understand all the things about how clinicals and all that stuff works, but don't you guys have to rotate through some of these sections?
We do.
So how do you get through your clinicals if you can't go into an ICU?
So I can tell you what they're currently doing, and it's this facility. So the school has not. Oh, and by the way, Catherine, you might have some explaining and some I'm sorry's to say, because it looks like it was Mr. Mendenhall.
Oh,
it says WM.
Yeah. Hi, Warner.
Yeah, but anyways, what happens with clinicals? The school is not mandating it. No, I don't. Most colleges, not all of them, but there's not all colleges across the board that are mandating this. So those that are not mandating it, if the clinical site is mandating it, not necessarily the college, then
which the clinical site, all of them are because of the CMS mandate.
But they're not employees. A clinical student coming in is not an employee. So they technically don't have to accept any exemption. Just go find a different clinical site. So for like my example, the college that Erica goes to school at, it's not mandated. And they will not be mandated. But that doesn't mean that the clinical site isn't. So they're already tight on clinical sites, because there's a shortage, obviously. And then after this whole mandate thing, they don't have to accept them. So some schools are moving them to the online practicum. Some are doing in person, like at the school practicums, which, like Erica, she should have had 5 weeks, Monday through Thursday. And she was already cut down. She got 4 days. 4 days this semester. Wednesday and Thursday, 2 weeks in a row. Now, some schools are holding very tight. If you're not going to accommodate our students, then you are breaking the contract, and we will not. And then other schools are, if you want to finish this program, then you have to get jabbed. There's one girl that is, she will literally have 1 day of clinicals that even though she graduates in 6 months, like physically walks, she's done with her clinical portion. I think it's December 8th or something, or December 10th, and they have to have it by the 8th, or it's the 8th and they have to have it by the 6th where she's at. She's like, I literally have to have this for one day, and they're not accepting exemptions from students, because it's a voluntary thing for those clinical sites. They don't have to take students, and students don't have to go there. But there's some schools that are saying, we're not going to, this is your assigned site, and there's not enough sites, and we're not going to accommodate finding you a different one. So it's this or it's nothing. And there are some schools that are withdrawing those students themselves, which it wasn't until Erica said, Mom, they can't do that I never even thought about it. The student has to sign that withdrawal slip, or they're not physically withdrawn. So for them to tell the student, you have been withdrawn, you're done, don't come to class. And I think that's really sad, because any of that financial aid, they got that, last month. Unless it was a late start class, then they got it this month. The school did. So they've already been paid for that student to attend until, next month or whatever it's on. And they're withdrawing the students. They're telling them to withdraw, or just you're done. Now, it's better to withdraw voluntarily, than to be withdrawn or to be kicked out and excused from that program, because good luck getting into any other school.
Well, good luck getting into any other school under the rules that are currently forming.
Right. And there are some people that are, I'm going to wait it out, and other students are saying, I'm done. I can't do this, and they're very disheartened and discouraged because they were, they really wanted to go back to school, or, they were just about done, whatever the situation. Like I said, mine hasn't personally gone through that yet. I'm kind of geared up and ready, just in case that were to happen. I'll be camping out at school.
Well, good. Warner's on the call, so you know a lawyer.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I would
happen.
I probably wouldn't need that type. I would probably need like defense attorney at that point. So I hope he knows someone because these kids are almost done, and I promise you right now, if there was a student that came to me and said, I really want to finish school, I think our education is one of the most important things that these kids or young adults or anybody can be given and finish. And if somebody came to me and said, will you help me? Will you help advocate for me? Or will you give me a direction? I'm going in. There's no doubt in my mind. I am going in. I'm glad to know that I've given mine kind of like the tools to, I don't want to, by no means be disrespectful, but, push back, ask questions. And she takes things to heart, and she just said, Mom, there's one that the site will not accept her medical exemption, and she had a severe anaphylactic reaction to the first shot, and it doesn't look like they're going to accept it.
So she went for it. She accepted that. She went for not exempting herself, but went and got the shot. She had a severe anaphylactic reaction to the first shot, which actually is one of those true, everybody agrees this is a medical exemption. You are.
And she still randomly swells. Like her face will randomly swell and stuff.
And she is not going to be offered a medical exemption, even though we know from this, this bill hasn't passed through yet, but this bill, if this bill passed through, the only thing that she would be even granted getting that medical exemption would be, you can't be fired.
Right. But this is a student. There's absolutely nothing on this bill that protects, but there's nothing that protects a clinical site student on this bill. I didn't see it. But then again, I only read like 5 pages.
The only thing it is a good faith. If they fall under the children's hospital or ICU thing, that they would do a good faith, whatever that means, shall make a good faith effort right here to provide equitable instruction and training.
Okay, so who has to make the clinical site or the school?
Looks like private college or state institutions. So
if
they can just say screw you.
Right. And so that's where it gets kind of sticky. I didn't see anything that I read that said
that's all that addressed.
Which is sad because I just feel like we've taken ADA with this.
It's gone.
And we went backwards 80 years. Like people fought hard for ADA, for civil rights, but especially your Americans with Disabilities Act, like they fought hard and they went through a lot of crap to get ADA, and we just took it and wiped it away. And the best you can do is this type of bill? Are you kidding me?
Well, not only that, but try to say, oh, well, it's the best we can get. No. It's actually codifying things that are, it's set to blow. It's going to fall apart. Moving on, I hate to be scary, but these things get long as it is.
Right.
But this section is an interesting one to me because it just exemplifies the nonsense nature of this, and it also tells us that they can continue mandating whatever they want so long as they pay for it. So they can do masks and testing and all this other stuff as much as they want, so long as they keep paying for it. Except for if you want to take the natural immunity route, which of course is not actually possible in reality in that real world situation, but you got to pay for those. However they eventually determine that we can test, you've got to take it out of your pocket, either student or employee. They also at least mention the fact that they can't deny a student the opportunity to participate in activities affiliated with the school or on school property based solely on the student's COVID-19 vaccination status, which to me is also, when I hear that, I just kind of go like, well, does that mean that they can like take that into account along with something else and discriminate against you, again, taking that in? But I mean, again, if we're going to take the side of those who are like, well, something's better than nothing, yeah, this would be one of those something's better than nothing situations. A lot of the rest, not so much. So here's another section that I think is pretty good, pretty strong, and also really weird. This one is the part that has to do with really the vaccine passport situation, because what we've talked about so far is only really about vaccine mandates, the schools mandating and the employers mandating. But this actually does it bans vaccine passports in most places. But this one is about that no individual shall be required to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination for any reason. That's a good one. I like that. Including the following: to enter a building, facility, or place controlled, operated, or owned by any business, etc., to receive a service provided by any business, etc., or to enter a building, facility, etc. But here's the weird part. To enter, number 3, is the one that makes me scratch my head. To enter a building, facility, or place controlled, operated, or owned by a court, or to receive a service provided in such a building, facility, or place, but only if the individual enters for purposes other than attending a court proceeding or event, or the individual receives a service not related to a court proceeding or event. So nobody is allowed to ask for your vaccination status. No building, no businesses, no subdivisions, political subdivisions, public officials, state agencies. Nobody's allowed to ask you, except for the courts, if you're going into court. For whatever reason, they are carved out here, and I don't even know. That one's just weird, because everything.
Does that mean like you can't go in person and get your birth certificate? Like I mean, because that's done, or pay your property tax. Like, because I mean, at least where we live, it's done at the courthouse. So I'm trying to understand. I don't get it.
That's how I'm reading it. I mean, no. So if you were paying your property taxes, that is not, you're not going there to attend a court proceeding or event. You're there to do the other business at that facility. So you'd be safe for that. But wait, does that mean if you've got jury duty?
Oh, sign me up, because then I don't have to worry about no jury duty.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm like I said, this section overall, I'm like, hey, this is a good one to me. I read this and I'm like, hey, this is pretty good. This is pretty forceful. It's not very wordy. There's not lots of dancing room that you can do with this. It's just, no, you can't for any reason, except for the courts, if you're going in for court. And I just don't know what to make of that one. That one's just so confusing.
Yeah, I don't know what that means either. There's got to be legal people on there. Where's Lori and Danielle? They're legal people. They understand that stuff. I don't get it. Or where's
Warner? You figure it out, Warner. Tell us what's going on. Why the court? Is there some other reason that makes some sense besides Well, the masks are allowed. So Warner, here we go. So this is here. So they're trying to keep controls in the courtroom themselves so that the judges can know and mandate masks there. But the thing is they can mandate masks.
Regardless.
This is only about asking for the vaccine passport situation. So it's just like, this is one of those things where when you see something weird, I want to know why. What possible reason do you have? I mean, is it like jury duty where, you don't show up for jury duty, you're in deep doo-doo, but if you're unvaccinated, then you can't go. I don't know. It's just weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, but I don't, like I said, the mask is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I would think. I don't know.
Well, the masks are not associated in here at all, except that they are actually expressly allowed if they are paid for by the school or employer.
Right.
They can be, again, it's one of those things where you're allowing it. All right, so this is the section about where people who are pushing this bill as being a good thing. They talk about that vaccine injury can be folded under workers' comp, which again, one of those things that sounds, yes.
Did you see the most recent? I'm just shocked. I heard what you said, but it's not comprehending because the most recent comment from Warner.
Oh. I would have thought that would be wildly inappropriate.
Right. I guess my thing is I agree with you. It is extremely inappropriate. So how do you, gosh, I'd like to know how that's handled.
Yeah.
When is he coming on again?
I don't know. Well, ask him. Anyway, let us focus.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just don't understand how that has to do with any type of attorney you are.
Moving on.
Sorry. Okay.
218. We're talking about 218.
Okay. That's why I can't talk to Warner Mendenhall, because this happens.
So this is talking about, wait a minute. Oh yeah, sorry. No, we're not there yet to the injury. So this is the only thing that you get out of this system. So the only protections you receive from all of this stuff that has come before, these exemptions and things of that nature. The only thing the exemptions will protect you from is you can't be fired and you can't be expelled. But they can do it whatever they want to you. But if they so desire to fire or expel you or otherwise break whatever rules came before here, the only thing that that you can do against it is, or the only thing that they can be punished by is it's just limited to a cease and desist and some back pay. So if your employer or whatever is being horrible, the best you can get out of them is cease and desist and some back pay. That's the protection. That's what you get. And actually, I believe that this also applies to, I think this applies to, no, I think this only applies to the employee stuff. I'd have to look. I hate the numbers. The numbers just confuse me. Here is the injury stuff. So this is supposed to say, hey, yes, if you are injured by a vaccine, it is now coverable by workers' comp-ish. So lots of extra levels on that one, where what it has in here is it changed this one little section saying that injury includes an injury or disability caused by a COVID-19 vaccine if the employer required the employee to receive the vaccine as a condition of employment. Okay, so good. That's good. We're adding vaccine injury that, the employer makes you get it. Well, they got to pay. Oh, maybe, because actually I should go on here. No, not that. Actually, I think I forgot to copy it in, but it does not pertain to anybody who is covered under the, who has ever been paid by the PrEP Act or by the 1986 vaccine injury. I forget what the name of it is.
VICP.
VICP, thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, so if you are paid by that, there's actually restitution back to the person who's paying for the workers' compensation. if you've taken money from those two. So workers' comp only comes in if you are not already covered by the PrEP Act or the VICP. And this is the key point here is, okay, you've said if you are injured by this vaccine, then workers' comp steps in. Except injury does not include a condition that pre-existed an injury unless that pre-existing conditioning is substantially aggravated by the injury. Such a substantial aggravation must be documented by objective diagnostic findings, objective clinical findings, or objective test results. Subjective complaints may be evidence of such a substantial aggravation. However, subjective complaints without objective diagnostic findings, objective clinical findings, or objective test results are insufficient to substantiate a substantial aggravation. I don't know how many substances they can get in there.
What that means is we don't have the way to test by it, but you can go ahead and claim it. We'll probably even know deep in our heart that it is from that, but
we cannot prove these, and especially these vaccines are doing things that we don't understand. We don't know how to test for it. I don't know how many times I've heard the same story where somebody is having clear problems, like the neurological problems. I mean, how many hundreds, thousands of videos are out there of showing people who have clear neurological problems that they are clearly not controlling. This is not in their head, but they go to the doctors and their test results are inconclusive. Well, first of all, you have no objective findings. And second of all, they can just simply brush it away. How do you say that it was the vaccine that did it? Because as I recall, what is it, 7 days, Carrie?
You got 7 days from onset of symptoms to be associated, which is, I will be honest, that is very generous.
It's generous from their perspective, but when it comes to anything autoimmune derived or anything of that nature, they take a little while to So what Carrie just said there is this is the official CDC, or who is it that determines that window of time?
FDA.
The FDA. So the FDA says any kind of new disease process that occurs after vaccination, if it occurs later than 7 days after your dose, it does not count. It is not considered a vaccine injury. So if on day 8 you start exhibiting insane, crazy symptoms that are actually, visible and testable and all that kind of stuff, the FDA has unilaterally determined that that is not vaccine related. So again, would not fall under this injury.
Right. So it'd be
happens outside of 7 days.
VRBAC. So you have FDA, CDC, NIH, and HHS. I forget. There's one more that's under that umbrella. That's the standard for COVID vaccine. But like I said, it's actually much shorter for most vaccines. And if you look at how much that fund is paid out, it's not a whole lot compared to the claims that have been put in for other vaccines. And that's so basically, unless you're dying within 7 days, it's very hard.
And when you are dying within 7 days, you have to have the proof of it.
Yeah, well, it's actually excluding everything else. So you exclude that you have, for example, the clotting. So when they do the genetic testing, if there was an underlying clotting disorder that you didn't know about because you've never had a clotting issue, then that is not a vax-related death.
Yeah. Well, that's the sticky part. That's why VAERS keep going, and we need to do that. We need to do that beyond the data, where you actually walk us through exactly how
the AEFI.
Yeah, the AEFI, how they dismiss all of these issues. How is it that we can all see? VAERS
it's not dismissed. We acknowledge it.
You acknowledge it, but say that it can't possibly. But again, focus. Yeah. 218. Yeah.
How long is this bill?
We're pretty much done here.
Okay.
I mean, this is the we got distracted in the middle there, Carrie.
It was Warner's fault.
So
you always blame the attorney.
This is actually this is actually this is more in your wheelhouse here. This is the business of liability protection. And this is actually, I believe this is the sections coming out of House Bill 606 that existed, that also went out of, it is not there anymore. It's actually the reason why the businesses are interested in passing such a bill is because they want their liability protection back. And it's some pretty awesome liability coverage. This is the medical side of it, and the business side of it is very, very similar, except for not focused on medical things, but just simply on more business exposures kinds of things. But essentially this whole thing, yes. So where is it?
I don't know, because I can't, it's really small, but again, you know, we've already decided what I am working with this evening. That's why I have like the biggest Jetson headset on and this tiny little screen. And so I don't know what it says.
So
I see a government
healthcare
agency
provider that provides healthcare services, emergency medical services, first aid treatment, or other emergency professional care, including the provision of any medication or medical equipment or product as a result and in response to an outbreak of MERS, SARS, or SARS-CoV-2, or any mutation thereof, is not subject to professional disciplinary action and is not liable in damages to any person or government agency in a tort action for injury, death, or loss to a person or property that arises from any of the following: an act or omission of the healthcare provider in the healthcare provider's provision, withholding, or withdrawal of those services, any decision related to the provision, withholding, or withdrawal of those services, and compliance with an executive order or director's order issued during and in response to an outbreak of MERS, SARS, and SARS-CoV-2, or any mutation thereof. So it's just basically, if it's related to SARS-CoV-2 at this point, or MERS, bizarrely enough, then they're off scot-free.
Okay, cool.
That's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, like are we really at that point to where we have to put that in a bill?
Well, no, that is actually the impetus behind why these bills are actually moving, is because they're trying to combine that liability protection in there. So what blows my mind is that it exactly is the situation of the remdesivir situation, where they can give you a drug or take away other drugs, and they can actively cause harm or death, and because it's in response to SARS-CoV-2, tough. What you gonna do? And that's what this, I should say, is the reason why we're having this bill at all. This is what made them actually get to the table.
So anybody who thinks that there's like good things with this bill, I don't know what to say, because there's nothing
there
good
are
with it.
I said, there are a couple good things, like again, this is actually not an anti-mandate bill, it's an anti-vaccine passport bill, except for courts, which are really weird. And it does have
an anti I know anything about healthcare bill.
Yes, that too. Yes. All right. So that's the business of the businesses, which is very similar.
Okay. Well,
and the last part of it is also very interesting.
Oh my gosh, there's more.
This is it. So if you stop interrupting me, we could end it.
Okay, sorry. I hate political things.
So both of the liability protection things are remedial back to September 30th, which is when 606 went out, when it ended, all the way through June 30th of 2023. So they're already anticipating this is going to be going on for a couple more years at least. So if anybody wants to attend a nice little party and, along with Governor DeWine and all of those high-level politicians, national politicians, and probably local politicians too, or, after watching this, if you've made it this far, we'll be there. if Carrie doesn't have an aneurysm.
I didn't even know about the 2023 part.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. I read it all the way to the end.
This is why I interrupt you, because I don't want to hear it. I hate political things. Don't ask me to come on this no more for politics. To look at a bill. I quit. Like, this is my resignation for political. I have Warner. From this point forward, I can't do it. Like, I physically, my blood pressure is creeping up there. And even Danielle's getting asked about this. Like, there's nobody has boundaries anymore for their vaccination status. Tell your friends, do not ask Carrie because they will not like the answer. So if anyone's thinking that's a good idea. So, all right. Have a good night because you have ruined mine.
You're welcome. Yeah. I should sum it up since we got so distracted there. That's a nice tight little thing here. So in conclusion, the reason this bill is a bit of a mess here is it actually does expressly allow mandating that your school, your employer can mandate any vaccine, any drug, any biological product, or your favorite I always forget it, genetic immunotherapy. There's no requirement in here at all that they have to justify it in any way, shape, or form. You can get exemptions, some of which are pure nonsense, so they don't actually exist, like the natural immunity. And it doesn't protect you. Even if you take an exemption, the only thing you are protected from is being expelled or fired. It doesn't protect you in any other way. They can do whatever they want to you. They can charge you more, pay you less. They can treat you like a secondary class citizen. The one thing, of course, it doesn't protect anybody working or learning in a children's hospital for some random reason, or ICUs. And it does not, well, the one thing it does do is it prevents vaccine passports unless you happen to have business at a court. So there's the synopsis. And we'll see all of you there tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but next Monday, right?
The 29th.
That's a nice thing to say.
I will definitely be there.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.